So we went along across Europe, headed down there to Augsburg. And there was anti-aircraft installations all over Europe because the entire continent was under German control. Everywhere we went was Germany. So even though on the map it said France, Holland, Belgium, Denmark, or something else, it was Germany because the Germans had control of it. So here we are flying along our 21 airplanes. We're all taking a few hits as we're going down there. We got to the target, and there's a point called the IP, the initial point. That's where we ended up down there at that IP, the initial point, and that was close to the target. From there, our 21 airplanes turned toward the target, and now we're on the bomb run. And that was about 5 minutes, straight and level, the whole thing in formation, flying in toward that target. And we dropped our bombs. We were in intense flak, anti-aircraft fire at that point. Now we've taken some along the way, but there it was intense. All of us took hits. We dropped our bombs, and we lost 3 airplanes out of our 21 right there. 3 of ours went down at that point over the target. So when we turned away from the target, now there were only 18 of us left in our formation. So we headed back toward England. All of us damaged somewhat. We all had a lot of holes. My worst damage was in number 1 engine out there, and the little ball turret gunner underneath called in, oil leak on number 1. It's running back off of the wing. Now, he's the only guy that could see the bottom of the airplane. So I said, how fast is it running? He said, well, it's a steady stream. It's not gushing, but there's a steady stream of oil running off of the wing. So I kept that engine running so I could stay in formation. So here we are flying back toward home, and I'm in my position in the formation. All 4 engines are still running. Now we got to a point about the edge of Belgium, and we're headed back over toward England. And there was a big storm ahead of us, so we had to divert around that. The clouds went way up above our altitude. You can't take a formation of airplanes into a cloud because you start banging into each other and losing airplanes. So we diverted around the cloud. And the diversion took us over a German airfield. And the anti-aircraft fire there was intense and very accurate. It was the most accurate I had seen. And this was my 28th mission. Every burst was right in our formation, just bang, bang, bang all around us. We were all taking damage. Now there are only 18 of us left, and 14 of us were seriously damaged at that point. Now my little ball turret gunner's down there underneath, and he called in, oil is gushing out of number 2 engine and number 3 engine. Now, I already had oil coming out of number 1 way back at the target.
Was it still running?
It was still running. Now, we didn't have a quantity gauge for our oil tank. We had just pressure gauges in the cockpit. We could see oil pressure, but not oil quantity. Kind of like in your car, you can see oil pressure, but you don't know how much oil is left in the tank. So that's the condition I was in. I didn't know how much was left in number 1, but it was still running. Now it's gushing out of 2 and 3. I called the top turret gunner out of the top turret, and I told him, he's our flight engineer, by the way, and I said, stand right here. And if you see any oil pressure fluctuating, hit the feather button right now, don't ask any questions. So he's standing right here holding onto the back of the pilot's and the co-pilot's seat. And the feather button, that's what I told him to hit. It was a big round red button, about that big around, and bright red, and there were 4 of them on the instrument panel, 1 for each engine. When you hit that button, it started a pump in the bottom of the engine oil tank, pumped engine oil at high pressure to the prop dome and made the prop blades go like this. We call that the feathered position. Then I could shut that engine down and the prop would sit still. Very little drag. So I was about 4 or 5 minutes out of that, beyond that German airfield, and an arm came over my shoulder and hit number 2, feather button. Number 2, the prop feathered, and I shut it down. I neglected to mention that number 2 engine manifold furnished the little warm air for our defroster. So when I shut that down, 2 things happened instantly. It got very cold in the cockpit because that little warm air helped warm it. And the windshield frosted up. All of my windows in the cockpit frosted up. So I couldn't see out. I had to back out of the formation because I couldn't see the fly formation anymore. Now, I'm a single airplane in enemy territory, crippled. That's what the fighters love to pick on. So here we are flying along crippled, and I headed straight for home. Now, as I said, we had 23,000 feet, so I gradually began descending. In about 4 or 5 more minutes, the arm came over my shoulder and hit the feather button for number 3, zap. It was too late. We had lost too much engine oil. There was not enough left to feather the prop. Now, the oil was all gone from that engine oil tank. The prop was turning the engine. It was still turning. The pistons are going in and out without oil. It took about 2 minutes, and that thing was red hot and stopped. The engine stopped. But the prop was going with such force that it tore these reduction gears that are in that nose section, just tore them all to pieces. And now the prop is no longer connected to the engine. It's out here just spinning away. It's a lot of drag for me. It is like a small barn door on this side that I'm having to push through the air. Here I am in enemy territory, all by myself. Number 1 engine is leaking oil all the way from the target, but still running. Number 2 is feathered and shut down. Number 3 is windmilling. I shut all the fuel off to the engine, so I wasn't worried about the engine, but the prop is out there windmilling.
It's not on fire.
And it had no oil. I'd had that happen before, and that whole hub, we got red hot on that one. So number 4 is a good engine. Thank goodness I had 1. Number 1 is still running but leaking oil. So I gradually was descending, but I'm pretty slow. I was descending to keep my airspeed up, but I was a little slower than other guys that had a lot of engines. I was down to 2. So I got to the base behind a lot of them. Our procedure when you got home was, if you had wounded on board, you shot a red flare. Now, we didn't talk on the radio a lot. We didn't tell the control tower, I'm number so-and-so and I'm ready for landing. No, you shot a flare. Told him you had wounded on board. So then the whole pattern was silent. We didn't talk. A green flare meant you had mechanical difficulties. I got within sight of the base and it looked like they were having a Christmas celebration. Red and green flares, everybody was shooting flares. I finally got in that traffic pattern and got on the final approach for our longest runway, which was 6,300 feet. That's half of what runways are today. They're all 10, 12, 14,000. Yeah. So this 6,300 feet is pretty short. 38 inches, I think. So I'm on the final. with this, all the problems that I had, I deliberately carried an extra 10 miles an hour down the final approach. Deliberately, because I didn't want it to land short. And I wanted that extra speed to make up for the lack of power. So therefore, I landed a little farther down the runway than normal and going a little faster than normal. Now when I hit the ground, I was going about 85 miles an hour. And I'd already gone past some of the runway. So I probably had a mile left. 85 miles an hour, that's been used up pretty fast. I hit the brakes, and there weren't any.
No.
The brakes were shot out.
God almighty.
Now I'm zigging down that runway, obviously going off the end unless I did something. Off the end of that runway and across the taxi strip and down a little slope was our boneyard where we took the wrecks to salvage parts off of them for other airplanes. I was in a wreck, but I didn't want to go there while I was still in it.
You're still alive.
So I figured I had to do something to stop that airplane. So at about 600 or 700 feet from the end of the runway, I made the airplane ground loop. Now ground loop doesn't mean over and over, it means sharp turns. I put full power on number one engine and made the airplane turn to the right sharply. Then straightened it with number 4 and did both of them to get me clear of the runway because there were airplanes behind me. Thank God for English mud.
Yeah. Sucked you in.
Nice gooey mud. If I had done that trick here on this hard ground, I would have been rolling for a month. That mud grabbed a hold of that airplane and I pulled the power off and it just went boom. The main gear were buried about that deep in the mud and there was a big pile of mud in front of each one of those big tires.
Didn't tear the gear off, though, did it?
No, and the airplane was still upright. I mean, it didn't tip forward.
Nose in.
I pulled the power off and it just stopped. The 10 of us got out of the wreck and we were standing out in front here looking at this thing that brought us home and just being thankful that we had made it back to England, that we were not in Germany.
Fantastic.
Coming out of.
Oh,